Hello, welcome to my office. So, I like to talk a bit about why we moved here. So, we bought a house so that one day we can live in a van. And I mean, that already sounds like a contradiction, but it is true. I immigrated about 2 years ago to be with my partner in the USA. And while the first year was spent on the whole immigration process and all of that, in the second year I was finally, once I got my green card, allowed to apply for jobs. And even though I have 4 degrees and quite a bit of work experience, I don't know whether it's the gaps in my CV or that the job market is really bad. I mean, I hope it's not because I'm a foreigner. Then again, I can also see that my work experience, no one would know the companies I have worked at because they are all in different countries. But anyway, so since I couldn't find a job and there was no end in sight of living on one paycheck and also living paycheck to paycheck, the only thing we thought we could consider doing is to cut our running costs. So then the question is, how can we cut costs? And the obvious one obviously is rent, because our rent was pretty high. We lived in Denver, in Littleton actually, and while that's on the outskirts, it's a very nice area, and also we picked a very beautiful community for our first flat together in Colorado to settle in during the immigration and so on. And so not only did our flat, it was large, we had a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom, so that my partner could have a office at home, and it was also useful when family came to visit to have a spare room. But also we chose this community because it had facilities like a beautiful pool and a gym and a dog park, and also the foothills in the backyard, which we had a view of. So that's what we were paying for, and we don't regret it one bit. We enjoyed it very much. But of course now we find ourselves in a place where we have bigger dreams and other dreams, and that's why cutting costs was the obvious thing to do. We also really loved the home because it was when we got our puppy Fitz, and raising her there, I mean, the first puppy year is not easy, but that's a story for another day. But we soon realized that while it was wonderful to have a dog park and to have so many dogs in the neighborhood, we also lived on the second floor, which in American terms is the third floor because they count the ground floor. So carrying her up and down to go on walks and to go potty, it just felt like once you have a dog, all you want for your dog is for it to have a yard. But of course, finding a place with a yard in Denver would have been even more unaffordable. So we started thinking of not only where we could move to, but also what our life could look like. So we spent quite some time brainstorming. There's a few criteria of our way of living that we already know, like we are child-free and we choose to stay child-free. Our only child is our puppy, so that's why getting her a yard is definitely a dream, or was a dream. And the other thing is obviously financial stability. It's hard to do on one salary, especially in America, and living paycheck to paycheck. But we could cut down on rent, and so we could have moved within Denver, we could have moved into a smaller place, into a community without facilities, something like that. But an apartment with a house with a yard was definitely not an option in Denver. And since we don't appreciate the city life anymore, we've had our years in very big cities. We lived in London together. I spent most of my time in London. I lived in Paris, Louis lived in New York. So I think as much as years ago I would have never said, oh, I really want to live in the middle of nowhere, remote, rural, things changed. We changed. And especially having a dog, things change. So once we started brainstorming and really dreaming up what our life here could look like, I finally got my partner to consider van life. And the reason why I want to live in a van, especially in America, is because America is humongous, and every time I've visited prior, I was usually in cities, and I wasn't really aware of everything that is in between. And there is so much to see here. Driving is the way to go in this country, and that's why if you can drive your home around and stay wherever and explore, and that just all sounded amazing. So we researched how to get into a van, and we knew we wanted to build the van out ourselves. And my partner is very much into cars and a very good driver, so he said, if our car becomes our home, then we should better make sure that the car doesn't break down and whatnot. So a newer model or even a new car, just to make sure that the ride itself is comfortable and enjoyable, because that's the whole point of living on the road. But also to have this security, because obviously if your car breaks down, you suddenly are also homeless because you can't stay in your van while it's in a repair shop or whatever. We figured the build out would cost us $20,000. We could probably do it for a little less, but when we were doing our research, the real problem we had was that we didn't know where we could park the van, build out the van, so we would have to get a space for it. We didn't have any tools, and that's the cost that really broke the camel's back, because it's just not attainable right now. And that's why it was another argument. If we were living somewhere with a yard, we could pull in the van, we could build the van in the yard. And that's why we started thinking of, okay, maybe this is a way to van life by renting a place, a house in the middle of nowhere, which should be much more affordable. But it has a yard for fits and it has a yard for the van build. In hindsight, I'm really happy that we realized that the van was not an option, at least not right away. And also that we realized we don't think we want to do it full time, because the problem is I am an immigrant and I need a postal address. But also when you work remote, of course you could have internet on the road and so on, but it being your home, it just feels challenging if you have nowhere to pull in and take a break or recess or somewhere to land if you end up breaking down with the car and it's in repairs. We don't have family and friends around, so those reasons were why we ultimately decided against full-time van life. And yet we know that living in a van for longer periods of time is definitely something we want to do, especially exploring this continent and further south maybe. So we realized that we don't mind moving rural, but with that we did have some prerequisites. So we didn't want to start a homestead or a new construction in the middle of nowhere with no facilities nearby. I knew I wanted healthcare nearby. I knew I wanted a supermarket nearby. I knew I wanted to feel safe, so looking at crime rates. But I also knew we needed a solution to charging our electric car, because otherwise we would be stuck in a tiny town and couldn't go anywhere. We were lucky enough that we obviously don't have to care about education. As I said, we are not planning on having children, and we also don't have to care about the job market, because my partner works remotely and I also only look for remote jobs. And with this list, we started looking at where we could move to. We considered another state in Colorado, but to be honest, we just really love Colorado. We feel really good here. We haven't even explored much of it yet, but the mountains, the climate, the people, it's a real vibe. And so we looked within Colorado and we looked at what are the most affordable places. So we stumbled across Pueblo, which is south of Denver, and then we found Trinidad. And while we were looking what places we could rent in Trinidad, we had another realization, and that was that we actually realized that we could save even more money on rent by getting a mortgage. And that sounds backwards, especially for me, because in Europe I have never heard of anyone buying a home with basically no down payment, because we don't have the money for a down payment. And here it is different. So when we visited Trinidad for the first time, we were just really impressed. First of all, we felt really good being here. Everyone greets you. It seems like the people are really happy, living a happy life here. So once we realized that we could have the perks of living in Trinidad with its Safeway and Walmart, it has a hospital, it has a dog park, it has a beautiful lush green park, it has a little cute downtown, it has a really rich history, it has a beautiful library, and wonderful people. That was our first impression. We then researched the history obviously a bit more, and we really felt like it spoke to us. But also we looked deeper into what homes were on the market and what value of house we could afford with a mortgage. And we looked at a home. It was very cute, a 1-bedroom, 1-bath with a small yard. It would have been absolutely sufficient for us. But the day we looked at it was also the day it went under offer. And yet we weren't discouraged about Trinidad. So we decided to drive down again and look at this other house that we initially didn't want to see because it was way too big for the two of us plus tiny dog. So the reason why we looked at it is because it was the right price, and also it had a huge yard, and we liked its location, we liked the look of it, we liked how old it was. We were just a bit worried that it was falling apart and that we couldn't actually make it livable for very little, because we obviously didn't have the budget for a huge renovation. To make it livable for us, our prerequisites were pretty small, like water, power, internet access. That's about it. And when we saw this home, the bones were so good. It's structurally sound. It's the only thing that was a big hurdle was that the electricity, though it was working, wasn't up to code. It wasn't updated. It hasn't been updated. No one has been living here for a long time. But we figured at least we should try to get some estimates and see whether we could find a way with the buyer to have some money in escrow for these repairs. So we put in an offer, we had an inspection, and we were very happy with the outcomes. We actually did get an escrow to repair the power and a few other things. We got the home. And it's interesting because obviously people say we bought a home, but actually we're going to be buying this home for the next 20 to 30 years. But the beauty of it is we get to enjoy it already, and it's ours. So the irony is, the plan is still to get a van. And the updated plan is that we are going to create this home as our home base, a place where we can always return to, where we can always recover from any trips, and where we always enjoy being at. But then the van would allow us the luxury of traveling, especially in America and especially with a dog, to see all of these landscapes and all of the states. There's so much to do in this country, and I'm so excited to do this one day. I think we also had a lot of epiphanies of what we're actually striving for in life, and that is to have a lot more freedom. And freedom to us is the freedom how we spend our time, that we can spend time however we want to, that we have the freedom not to worry, the freedom to have our finances to afford the life that we want. And that doesn't mean that we need to earn more and buy a bigger house or do all of the renovations or get a newer car or any of that. It's more that we have the safety net to have a future, and also the freedom to explore the projects we're really excited about. And the other epiphany is that having a home, and I have never lived in a house with a yard before, it was always apartments, most of the time very small apartments. So having a house with a yard, it just feels like you're on holiday every day. And it's not because the house just runs itself. Obviously there's a lot of work to do here, not just because this home is falling apart. Even in a new home or just upkeep of a home, you're responsible for everything. But the beauty of it is you're responsible, but it's also your choice when to deal with it. And we really enjoy all the small tasks and figuring out how this home was constructed, how it works, how we want to work in it. And this holiday feeling, especially having set up the porch and this backyard deck, we get to enjoy sunsets and sunrises nearly every day now. Like, I don't have to go on a holiday to do that anymore. And fair enough, the reason why we paid so much for our old apartment is because of the views, and we watch the sunset and sunrise every day there too, but from within our apartment or on our balcony. Whereas here we get to be outside and it's beautiful views everywhere. I think what we've already achieved is finding a slower, calmer, more content way of living, because you start being interested in the wildlife and the birds, and you're excited to see a butterfly or hear the wind, or when the storm rolls in, or when the sun peeks out, or when a bear comes by. So there's a lot to enjoy by being closer to nature, by living more rurally, by not having this city stress. You have no commuting, you never have to look for a parking spot, you're not stuck in traffic, there's never crowds, it's always peaceful. People are happy to see you, they're curious about you, everyone says hi and is super welcoming. So there's a lot that speaks for joining a real community, a community that I've never really found within a city. So yeah, that is basically how we ended up buying a home in Trinidad, so that hopefully one day we get a van, we get to build out this van in the comfort of our own yard, and we get to go travel in this van. But the feeling like you're on holiday every day and that's just our life now, it's really interesting, because if life already feels like a permanent holiday, do we even still need a van? Time will tell. So that was a bit of background to how we ended up here. And I'm doing this because there's so much going on in our lives, and I'm really excited about all the changes we have made just in the last month. At the same time, I'm so excited about what's coming up next. And that is a really nice place to be. So please enjoy our home, and I hope it makes you think about what you want in your life, how you want to live, and what you have to do to make it happen. See you next time.